The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Welcome to today's webinar entitled Towards a Converged Network, Transport Network Strategies at Telekom Austria Group. My name is Adlan Fela, and it is my pleasure to welcome our guest speakers today, Alexander Schneider and Caroline Gabriel. Alexander Schneider is Head of Transport Network Development at Telekom Austria Group, a front-runner in European operators' move towards fixed mobile convergence and all IP networks. And Caroline Gabriel is our Research Director at Maravedis-Rethink. Mr. Schneider will discuss key elements of Telekom Austria's strategy for deploying a 21st century network which harnesses some of the most important new technologies in fixed and mobile telecoms. This includes small cells, software-defined networking, and the migration to all IP infrastructure. In particular, the presentation will focus on the strategies and challenges in backhaul and IP migration. Mr. Schneider's presentation will be complemented by highlights from Maravedis-Rethink's most recent research into the 4G RAN and backhaul deployment plans of the world's leading mobile providers. The webinar will last for 1 hour, including a short Q&A session following all the presentations. Before we start, let me go through a couple of housekeeping slides. On your screen, you can see a grab tab which allows you to click to open and close the control panel. You can click the square to toggle view window between full screen and window mode. The audio pane allows you to select between different audio options. We encourage you to submit questions throughout the session. I will review the questions towards the end of the presentation and select some to answer them. Commonly asked questions include, can I obtain the slides? Yes, the event is being recorded, and the slide deck as well as the webinar recording will be available within the next 2 days. If you need more information about today's research or content, please visit our website, maravedis-pwa.com. Before I hand it over to Caroline Gabriel for the first part of the presentation, I would like to launch the first poll, understand the demographics of the audience today. So please take a few seconds to answer the poll. We would like to know which part of the ecosystem you belong to, whether you're a service provider, an equipment vendor of some of the categories listed, or an analyst press consultant. So we still have votes coming in. I'll give it a few more seconds for people to vote before I close the poll. And there you are. So we have quite a big participation of analyst press consultant today for the event, followed by a great number of service providers at 20%, 22%, and then different participants coming from the manufacturing sector and software vendors as well. So without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Caroline Gabriel, Research Director at Maravedis-Rethink. So let me give you the control here.
Thank you, Adlan. While you're doing that, I'll introduce myself. Welcome everybody to our webinar today. I'm just going to very briefly share a few highlights from our research service. We have various services here, which Adlan will go into shortly, but I'm in charge of our RAN research service, which covers every aspect of mobile operators' investments in their access network. So key topics at the moment, including new architectures such as small cells and cloud RAN. Just to share a little bit about our methodology and why that sets us apart. Our starting point for all our forecasts is that they are highly demand-driven. We take the top 40 mobile operator groups worldwide, which includes about 180 operating companies, and with a lot of in-depth interviewing of those companies and modeling and profiling Our starting point is the number and the type of cell sites they're deploying, what their data requirements and so on will be, their spectrum and regulatory position. Based on all that, we can model the networks that they're rolling out over the next 5 years, make forecasts, and together with vendor input on shipments and expectations, we can produce what we believe is a highly granular regional picture of exactly what is going to be deployed at cell sites and throughout the network in the years ahead. The last time we conducted this exercise was for a report just at the very end of last year, and I'd just like to share a few highlights from those findings to indicate the sort of areas and the sort of angles that we're taking with our particular research. We know there's a lot out there and each analyst has a different way to do things. Key finding, which will not surprise anyone of course, is that as operators move towards converged networks and mobile het nets but combined with wireline, fibre and cable, there's a huge amount of complexity in the decisions that need to be made about equipment going forward, and operators will be using many tools to maximise the capacity that they can deliver and their ability to support rising data needs. So, of course, there's the air interface upgrades and new spectrum, but there are far more perhaps unconventional ways that operators are increasing their total pool of capacity. And the graph shows the percentage of new data capacity that will be added on wireless networks over the next 5 years, and in fact up to 2020, according to our calculations. And this is interesting. It shows that in 2013 there's still a heavy reliance on new licensed spectrum, a very conventional way to increase one's network capacity. There were a lot of auctions, and those will continue, but overall the importance of that spectrum will decline as other methods come into play, including, of course, small cells and Wi-Fi. And further towards the end of the forecast period, you can see some of the more experimental approaches that operators are really just very cutting-edge operators are looking at the moment, such as the Cloud RAN, which we are quite big believers in the Cloud RAN, but it's going to be quite a slow process for that to go mainstream. And similarly, very flexible networks where the capacity can be allocated on demand, almost right down to, certainly to cell level, almost to user level. These are things that are going to revolutionise how capacity is achieved and delivered towards the end of our decade. And all this means that there is a rising value for operators of being able to access a combination of LTE spectrum and these other ways of supporting LTE plus fibre. The two together are important. The days when it was a huge advantage to be a mobile-only operator because you didn't have the legacy of the wirelines, that really is over, and we're seeing that with companies like Vodafone investing heavily into the wireline side of things. It's the combination of fibre plus LTE and its successors that are making the economics work with the levels of data usage that we're seeing. So on the mobile side, the new architectures, the two critical ones being small cells and Cloud RAN. The graph shows our 5-year forecast for Cloud RAN deployment, and that's regional. The reason APAC gets its own graph is because it's so much bigger than the rest. It's sort of 5 times larger in terms of its deployment by primary site numbers throughout this period. But we can see steady growth, but really that remains the preserve of a few cutting-edge pioneers at the early stage. Although a lot of operators conducting trials and showing interest and going kind of halfway towards Cloud RAN, perhaps not entirely virtualizing their whole network on servers until you get to around 2020 stage, but starting to virtualize a lot more functions than they did before, sometimes on pure servers, sometimes using a sort of hybrid architecture with what we used to call baseband hotels. So we're seeing the basic Cloud RAN platform scattering into many definitions which will relate to the operator's practical requirements and their availability of spectrum and so on, and their willingness to take risk. And of course, as we'll see, their access to fibre. There are many other ways that operators are looking to modernise their networks. So far we are, of course, seeing a great focus on modernising the network and repurposing spectrum and using existing sites. So there is a decline in the increase in macro sites and the equipment that goes into them. And really this is a complex process of upgrading and modernising the networks that are already in place for many operators. And then supplementing that with the new small cells, so increasing the new cell build-out, get smaller and smaller, down to the specialised sort of all-in-one metro cell architecture that's becoming so important. Again, we think there's been perhaps slower than expected uptake of the full public access metro cell, and really there's a lot of momentum behind that from this year, but heavily weighted towards indoor rather than outdoor deployment, and with a lot of carriers who, perhaps some of them who intended to move quite quickly with fairly simple small cell rollouts, are now actually holding fire and waiting for particularly multi-mode cells that combine 3G and 4G and or cells that also have Wi-Fi in them, and integrating carrier Wi-Fi much more into the core of the network rather than just using it as a sort of offload. So we think that causes some delay in the rollout of public access small cells, but when they do come out, it will be with bigger rollouts and more immediate return on investment for the carriers. And the other important trend that we see in the RAN is the so-called super macro. So in other words, great improvements to what are regarded as fairly conventional ways to improve the efficiency and capacity of an existing macro site, new antenna techniques, new ways of adding sectors, 6-sector base stations even sort of coming back into fashion. So it's not all about tearing a network apart and going for a whole new architecture. There's also a lot of work on making the most out of the macro cells that are already in place. All this is highly dependent, as I've said, on fibre, and we'll hear a lot more about that from Alexander. But there is a widening gulf between the mobile operators that have fibre, either that own it themselves or have a very close relationship and affordable access to ubiquitous fibre, and the have-nots. This is important for small cell backhaul, and also as Cloud RAN does develop for fronthaul, for linking the edge sites of the Cloud RAN back to the hotel or the server. And these require, the latter of these is almost definitely requires fibre at the minute, although we are starting to see, as the graph shows, wireless fronthaul developing, but it remains quite a minor part of the total picture. Really, the economics rely on high-speed fibre. Small cells, of course, don't need the same speed and capacity, but fibre is still the ideal way to ensure that they're future-proof and they can support peak demands, particularly in dense urban areas. And so all the challenges getting fibre to these many, many sites and at an affordable cost are one of the key challenges that mobile operators are looking at the minute, and it's going to spur an awful lot of mergers, acquisitions and new partnerships going forward, particularly in very urbanised countries, as we're already starting to see headlines now. So the balance of power, as I say, shifting to those with excellent wireline capacity and access. But however, that has a knock-on effect of speeding the pace of innovation for the alternatives. So for the operators that aren't in that fortunate position, they will be looking to use, for instance, a lot more microwave backhaul and wireless fronthaul, and we're seeing the industry that supplies those technologies really stepping up, and the pace of innovation has been extremely fast in the last couple of years compared to previous years before. So, as they say, necessity is the mother of invention, and we believe there will be a big wave of invention in this area. We'll see wireless taking a bigger part again of the transport. I think that's something that we'll hear more about from Telekom Austria. But before we do, I'd like to leave you with those thoughts and hand back to Adeline to explain a bit about the services. I hope I've given an insight into the areas that we cover and the approach that we take. You'll enlarge on that now.
Thank you, Caroline. Before we move on to my presentation, I would like to launch a second poll here. I would like to ask the audience what they expect public access small cells to be deployed. Please take a few seconds here to respond. I would like to know your opinion about this important question, which I'm sure has generates different opinions. We still have a number of people voting in, so I'd like to give it a few more seconds. Okay, so I will now close the poll and share the results with the audience. And so as you can see, hopefully 40% believe that small cell is still too far, 2 years away from real massive deployments, while 30% expect them to be in 2014, 2015. So still long-term trend. Are those numbers in line with your thinking, Caroline? And
yeah, very much so. I mean, I think we see this as the year when some mainstream action and some big deployments happen, but this is a complicated technology. There are a lot of decisions to be made, so I think that's a very realistic timescale, but most of the really big activity is going to come from 2015 and later.
okay. Let's see here if I can become the presenter.
I think I've made you presenter, actually.
Okay, let's see here. For some reason I can't share my screen. Let me make you presenter and then back again. Maybe it was because of the poll. Okay. Okay, there you go. All right. So I would like to take the next few minutes here to present Maravedis-Rethink here. Let me close the poll here first. Let's see, hide. There you go. There you go. So for those that are familiar or not very...
Your screen yet?
Yeah, I believe, there you go. Yeah, thanks. So we are a wireless infrastructure analyst firm since 2002. 2 years ago, Maravedis and Rethink decided to partner and work together to provide better research services to our customers. And so our research offering is simple. We focus on the wireless infrastructure. So the three aspects of the radio access network, the backhaul, mainly on the wireless side of things, and the core network. On top of that, we've been doing a lot of work on spectrum and regulation in over 100 countries, analyzing, new licensing activity, and increasingly we do a lot of work on backhaul spectrum, opening bands, as well as point to multipoint bands that could be reused, for example, for small cells. On top of that, we have a number of regular and ongoing research services, which include Wireless Watch, which is a service led by Carla and Gabriel. Faultline, which deals with digital content and video trends. And then we do engage into custom research and consulting, the latest of which was with the Wireless Broadband Alliance. The analyst team here, so my role here is a customer engagement, making sure that we talk to our customers and better understand their research needs, as well as coordinate strategic orientation of the company in terms of research. Caroline, who you heard, is based in London. I'm in Miami, and we have a team of analysts and collaborators in different cities and countries. The point is that we have industry experts that dive very much into their respective areas. What makes us different really is the focus and energy we put on relationship with the carriers. I think today is a testimonial of that. So the carriers are at the center of our research process, where we look at the input coming from operators to provide reliable forecast in terms of their CapEx spendings, their deployment plans, the challenges they're facing, etc. And so the information coming from carriers is validated and cross-matched with information coming from the rest of the ecosystem, including vendors and shipment information. And really, carriers are the center of everything we do. In terms of expert analysts, we just heard about what Caroline had to say about long-term RAN trends. The real time value really refers to the engagement we have with our customers, providing regular support, analyst time. We become part of your team. as far as everything that you need in terms of research. But it really depends. Everything starts with your objectives. Traditionally we have helped a lot of product line managers, product managers to feed information for their business modeling, to make estimations of, for example, new radio development. That's on the vendor side. On the operator side, we have done work for estimating, providing due diligence on new technologies or on vendors. On the regulatory side, we also provide guidance and advice to regulators in terms of what are the emerging trends in terms of spectrum and regulation. And so we understand that there are different stakeholders within each company, whether they're long-term investment decisions or short-term tactical guidance for emerging markets or emerging market segments. And so in engagement with the customer, everything starts with better understanding your objectives. In terms of concrete research offering, we have a number of them, but I will only focus on the top 3 research services we have, and the one that was covered by Caroline includes information coming directly from the RAN service. But the RAN service is an annual service which includes 2 comprehensive reports in PDF. They run, on average 60-80 pages, very in-depth reports, and summarizing information coming again from surveys with operators, phone interviews with operators, the CTO or network planning director level, complemented by online carrier surveys. We also speak to leading technology vendors to understand the evolution of the technology and how that fits into the challenges and opportunities of the carriers. The surveys also include 6 research notes on different emerging topics, be it network virtualization or software-defined networks or carrier aggregation, what have you. And of course, the analyst support throughout the year. That's something that our customers value a lot. And that's led by Carl and Gabriel. On the backhaul side of things, we have now partnered with EGL Wireless. Erlum is our lead analyst for the backhaul side. So again, it's the same format here except for the research notes, but we have 2 very comprehensive reports, probably the best in the industry. And they look at both, again, input from the operators and the carriers' expectations, as well as number crunching from the vendors. Some different customers have different needs. Some customers are looking for market shares by vendor. Others are looking at reliable forecast, and we put a lot of emphasis on the methodology of the forecast. Your model is as good as your assumptions, and that of course comes with analyst support as well. Now in the wireless watch, which I'll show here, this is the document that you get for 48 times a year. Every week, Carl and Gabriel puts together the wireless watch, which dives into the impact of recent industry events in the wireless industry. And so there's a lot of in-depth information. This is not a Google or light reading type of information. This is really understanding the impact of important events. In terms of examples of reports, this is the latest report we published on the RAN, which dives into the new economics of the network. And also we, in partnership with the EGL, we also provide something that's pretty unique in the industry, which is complete teardown of base stations. I'm showing here one of the latest reports on the Ericsson LTE radio. And that goes back to the slide here where we have, in partnership with EGL Wireless, added a number of important reports to our offering. Those focus on the supply side, shipments information, and technical information of the different radios. Finally, just some testimonials of real customers coming from different parts of the ecosystem. And if you're interested in more information about our research services, or a particular report, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'd be happy to help. Thank you. And now, before I introduce the next speaker, I would like to run the latest poll. Let's see here. So I would like to ask you your views on some of the emerging wireless backhaul technologies for small cells. So if you can take a few moments here to respond, be much appreciated. Thank you. We still have people voting. This is a great way, by the way, to engage the audience so that they're fully listening to the webinar. So let me close the poll here and share with the audience. I want to comment the results, Caroline.
Interesting, quite strong for point to multipoint, which is interesting because a few years ago that was seen as such a niche technology, and small cells it's really come into its own. So that comes second highest after the more traditional sub 6 gigahertz technology. So I'm kind of a bit surprised not to see the E-band going higher, but yeah, that's it's a real mix there, which I think is exactly what's going to happen with small cells. That operators will be using a huge patchwork of different technologies and spectrums according to what's available and what topologies they have.
Excellent. Well, great. So without further ado, Alex, the floor is yours. We can see your screen, but we can't hear you yet.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you, Adelaine, for your introduction. Thank you, Caroline, for your presentation. This is Alexander Schneider speaking on behalf of Telekom Austria Group, and I will give you a short presentation in the next half an hour about transport network strategy in Telekom Austria Group. First, I will introduce to you briefly who we are and our international transport backbone, and then I will present to you the, so to say, the framework of our strategy, which is convergence towards becoming both fixed and mobile operator. This sets the framework of our strategy, and based on that I will then develop further our transport network strategy, covering the following items: IP/MPLS, DWDM, Ethernet microwave, small cell backhauling, migration to all IP, security, synchronization, and software-defined networks. Telekom Austria Group considers itself to be one of the leading communication providers in Central and Eastern Europe. We operate in 8 countries, as you can see on this map, in Austria, Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia, Macedonia, Bulgaria, and in Belarus. With almost 17,000 employees, we deliver voice telephony, broadband, internet, multimedia, data IT solutions, wholesale, and mobile payment solutions for more than 23 million customers. For our wholesale customers, we have, among others, mainly our special offer based on our international backbone, which we have built across Europe, mainly in Central and Eastern Europe. And we use this international backbone both for our internal needs as well as for wholesale services for our customers. Now let me speak a little bit about a convergent network strategy. Here on this slide you can see a diagram where we are showing the different markets that we operate today. Our home market is Austria, where we are most developed. We are the incumbent operator in Austria. We have a large fixed network, a large fiber network, and we are a convergent operator in Austria, both fixed and mobile. We have recently, a couple of years ago, merged the former fixed net operator Telekom Austria and the former mobile-only operator Mobilcom Austria, merged them back to one company offering bundled services to our customers. In all the other markets, we have been traditionally mobile-only operator. However, in some of them, the market is so mature and the operator is so mature that we have decided to make a step further and develop these operators from mobile-only to convergent operator. Especially we have done this in Bulgaria and in Croatia by acquiring local cable and IT operators in order to have a fixed net line. In Slovenia, we have also a fixed net offering, but this is via wholesale offering from the local incumbent operator. In the other markets, in Serbia, Belarus and Macedonia, we're still mobile only, and we put here the focus on continuing the growth of these operators in order to get a critical mass to become later also a convergent operator, and we are constantly watching opportunities in these countries to make acquisitions in the future to further develop all our markets. On this map you can see in a geographical way where we are already convergent operators in Austria, in Croatia and in Bulgaria. In Bulgaria we have acquired two companies. They are called SpectrumNet and Megalan, offering in several big cities of Bulgaria fiber to the home via GPON and also active Ethernet service. In Croatia we have acquired a company called BNet, offering coax cable infrastructure and ADSL wholesale offer, and also they have a significant large fiber network which we can use and use already in the past to connect our sites. And in Austria, of course, we have a large fiber home base, and we offer fiber to the curb, fiber to the home, DSL and vectoring to a large extent. With this strategy, we follow the goals to reduce our lease lines and to reduce the OPEX, to be able to provide a faster connection to mobile sites through fiber, to consolidate the transport network for fixed and mobile, to reduce the number of locations and to reduce the number of network elements, and also to offload data traffic from cellular to fixed network in the home environment. And now let's move on to specific topics in transport network development, which are based on this framework of convergence story. In the IP MPLS, we have issued an RFP 3 years ago and selected 2 vendors for the group. We have decided at that point of time for Cisco and Alcatel-Lucent to be our IP MPLS provider, and the scope of the RFP, as you can see, covers the access, the aggregation and the core, and this is still in place. We have built these networks. This is a convergent IP backhaul network for both fixed access and mobile access, and we want to continue this strategy for the short and medium term future. In the long term, maybe with the upcoming new concept for software-defined transport network, this may change, but not in the short term. We have at that time defined 8 different node types, 3 core, 3 aggregation and 2 access types, and the core routers can also fulfill the task of a security gateway. I will come to that later again. On the optical layer, we have issued an RFP in 2012 for Metro and Access and selected Alcatel-Lucent and Huawei for the group. in the core WDM layer, we have, in addition to these two vendors, also Coriant, but we decided not to make an RFP last year and this year because we have still high book values compared to the planned new investment. But later in a few years, when this equipment is written off, again with the upcoming software-defined network concept, there may be new opportunities. What we are doing is, of course, to optimize the existing IP/MPLS and DWDM network in order to optimize the transport cost. Now on this slide you see a decision tree for backhauling. Backhauling sites, radio sites, in the present and also in the future are being done either via fiber or via Ethernet microwave. And whether we decide for fiber or for microwave, it depends on a couple of decisions. And mainly we set a threshold value X, and if the fiber investment is smaller than a defined threshold, and if it is possible to do the construction work until a certain point of time defined by our rollout plan, in that case we build fiber. If not, then we check if microwave is possible. If yes, we build the microwave. If not, then in some rare cases we have built copper, but we will not do this in the future. We will then rather calculate again the business case for a fiber connection, and if the business case is positive, we will build the fiber although the investment is higher than the threshold. The business case may be positive if there is a high traffic volume expected. And what you can see here on this diagram is the resulting technology split for mobile backhaul in A1 in Austria, where we are the incumbent operator and where we have quite a large fiber network in place, which leads to the fact that connecting a new site is not so expensive because the distance from a new site to the existing fiber network is not very large, and that's why we have the majority of sites connected with fiber. In other opcos where we are not the incumbent or where we do not have purchased or acquired a fiber or cable company, in those countries, of course, the share of microwave is much higher. If you ask yourself what is X, what is this threshold, this is mainly the total cost of ownership of the alternative solution, meaning the microwave TCO, and this includes the CAPEX for the equipment, for the service of mounting the equipment, but also the maintenance cost and the spectrum cost over the depreciation period. We have selected two microwave vendors for the group. In 2009 we issued one RFP, our first group RFP for microwave, and we selected Ericsson for short-haul equipment. And in 2012 we issued a second RFP, and we selected, in addition to Ericsson, a second vendor for the group, which is Ceragon. And in this RFP we tendered not only short-haul equipment but also long-haul and E-band. So we have a defined solution for E-band already in the group. We consider fiber and Ethernet microwave to be a very good combination, a technology mix, and in this picture you see a representation of a concept that we call the Y concept, because it looks like the letter Y. We can, with such a concept, use a broadband microwave as the last hop, in the last mile, in order to extend the fiber network in order to make a both rapid and cost-effective rollout of a mobile network. When it comes to small cell backhauling, we believe that sooner or later small cells will emerge in our networks. We do not yet know when and how many, and especially in Austria, since our spectrum auction last year, where we have acquired very large amounts of spectrum for a large amount of money, we are in a quite comfortable position concerning the macro layer. We believe that we have sufficient spectrum for the next few years to come. So maybe the coming up of small cells will be restricted to certain tactical areas of rollout where we need special additional capacity, like in football stadiums or in certain dense urban hotspots. But we believe that in the near future we will not make a massive rollout of small cells, at least not in Austria. In the other OPCOs, the situation is similar. We believe that also in the short term we will not need a massive rollout, but this will partly also depend on the result of upcoming spectrum auctions in these other countries. But however, we need definitely a concept how to do the small cell backhauling, and we have one defined, which is based on a tool set of different technologies that we have already, relying on E-band microwave, on fiber, for non-line of sight applications, TDD LTE, DSL coax, but also the classical short-haul low-band microwave. And in addition, what we have not yet put in our focus, but we want to do in the future in order to complement our tool set, we want to also to have a closer look on the V-band microwave, because we believe it has certain physical properties which are especially interesting for small cell backhauling. The higher attenuation reduces interference and allows lower frequency reuse. The wider beam allows fast mounting and insensitivity to misalignment and wind. We expect this to be low cost, all outdoor equipment with a small footprint, and also low installation cost because of the possibility to use auto alignment. Migrating of the backbones from legacy to IP, we have today already all national backbones IP/MPLS capable. However, we have still SDH networks, but there are no new investments in SDH. New services are provisioned on the IP/MPLS backbone, and existing services are step-by-step migrated from the SDH to the IP/MPLS whenever possible and as soon as possible. And this traffic reduction in the SDH network allows us to reuse parts as spare for the still remaining SDH network, and until 2018 we plan to phase out SDH in the backbone. When it comes to the backhaul, I show you here on this slide technology split over the years of our backhaul connections. From the years 2008 until 2013, you see the distribution of technologies. You see TDM for 2G still slightly rising. ATM for 3G has already been reduced, and both TDM and ATM will be put to zero until 2017. And also the total number of backhaul connections is expected to be reduced because of single backhaul for single run. But this is just a hypothetical distribution which shows roughly the direction how it could look like when we go to all IP until 2017. Now let's come to security. Here we follow 3GPP recommendation. Transmission of LTE backhauling can be in several cases unsecure, especially if the transport is not owned by an OPCO, for example in case of leased lines, if the locations of E node Bs are not owned, or if we do network sharing of the RAN. In that case, we need to use a security gateway, and this is already integrated in our, this functionality is integrated in our IP core routers, as I said, mentioned before. However, we will have a closer look to that and find out if this is sufficient, this integrated security gateway, or if it's not better to have a dedicated network element, a separate network element fulfilling a task of a security gateway. Here you can see on a picture where this security gateway is positioned in the network. It is at the edge between the access transport and the mobile core, terminating an IPsec tunnel which is started at the node B. The next topic of interest for us is synchronization. Before we can switch off the SDH and the TDM network, we need to have a synchronization network for packet networks up and running. So the main task is to provide accurate frequency to the 20,000 radio sites that we have currently in place when we migrate to All IP. Because with the legacy technology, this is delivered via the SDH, but in the future this will be delivered via a combination of synchronous Ethernet and Precision Time Protocol 1588, which are two standardized technologies working together. Synchronous Ethernet mainly focuses on frequency synchronization, whereas PTP delivers phase and time synchronization. However, in certain cases where synchronous Ethernet cannot be used because I do not own my infrastructure, in case of leased lines, for example, it's not possible to use synchronous Ethernet, because synchronous Ethernet can only be used when you have the full control over the whole connection line. If you don't have it, you have to use 1588 as a handshake protocol to constantly recalibrate the local timing, the local oscillator. We believe the best way is to use both technologies in combination, because they will complement each other and improve the timing accuracy. And when I go back one slide, you see here that we need phase and time synchronization also for coordinated transmissions, coordinated multipoint interference cancellation, and we believe that this will be needed in LTE Advanced. And this LTE Advanced technology, in our opinion, will become a reality in maybe 2 years from now, 2 to 3 years, and we want to be prepared also for that and need a network that is precisely synchronized not only in frequency but also in phase and time. Therefore, we will use both technologies, and the source of the time could be taken from national timekeeping organizations, because it is a matter of security. We could get it from the government, for example, in Vienna. But what we do not want is to use a GPS as a primary timing reference. We want to use GPS only as a backup or as a secondary timing source for security reasons. Phasing out legacy technologies is, I think, something that every OPCO does in these days. We have already replaced more than 50% of the legacy microwave with Ethernet microwave. We are already phasing out ATM. It will be phased out in the near future, and SDH will be done later. We will have SDH networks still for maybe 3 or 4 years. And other technologies like frame relay or X25 have already been phased out in the past. Let me close my presentation with a few words about software-defined networks, SDN, especially SDN in the transport network. What is a reality already today is network function virtualization in data centers. The next step for us is to introduce network function virtualization in the core, especially in the evolved packet core will be virtualized. This is our next step. And after that, we will also change our transport network. We believe that software-defined transport network will be the future, but I cannot share with you today more than this idea because we're currently developing our concept on that area. With this, I would like to close my presentation, and I'm ready for any questions from you.
Thank you, Alex. Brilliant. Thanks for sharing these insights and learn more about Telekom Austria Group. I would like to pass it on to Caroline to manage the questions, please.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you, Alex. Really interesting presentation. I'm going to pick up a few questions here, which I hope will add to the discussion. The first one is you showed a very clear slide about the decision tree between fiber and microwave, and I'm wondering how that tree will change in future and what new technologies do you see coming, especially in microwave, that might change your decision to use wireless rather than fiber?
Well, this decision tree is subject to change. When it was invented already some time ago, Telekom Austria A1, our Austrian incumbent, wanted to have 90% fiber and only 10% microwave, but then they realized that in many cases they were not able to build the fiber fast enough in order to fulfill the rollout plans, because there were procedures with the owners of the infrastructure, with the local authorities, that took longer than expected, and that's why they had to increase the microwave share. Then later they again increased the fiber share after some time, but they have now built more or less all the sites with fiber which could be connected easily and with low cost, or with relative low cost. The sites remaining that are not yet connected with broadband, which are still on narrowband, these sites are more far away from the existing fiber network, and that's why I expect the microwave share again to rise. In the other countries it's the other way around. We hope that we can, in all the OpCos, in all the operating companies where we are active, acquire in the future also fixed line. So by acquiring cable providers or fixed net providers, we hope to solve the problem of this decision tree, because otherwise the other OpCos who are mobile only would have a drawback, as you mentioned in your presentation, Caroline.
Yes.
And this will be a limiting factor for the future if they can use only microwave or mostly microwave. Because it's very expensive. It's very expensive to dig fiber for many kilometers to connect the fiber.
Yes, we hear that certainly from operators everywhere. There are several other questions in the area of wireless microwave. One is, what is your view on point-to-multipoint technology?
Well, point-to-multipoint is currently not in our main focus. We have made a field trial some time ago. We know that this technology is working, but we believe that it is economical only if there is a sufficient number of access points per sector, but with increasing demand of bandwidth per site, you need to reduce again the number of access points per sector, and then you come close to a point where this business case is not so positive compared with point-to-point microwave.
Caroline, I sent you some questions coming from the audience as well. Additional
we're
ones.
doing those now. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
That's great. Yes, another one, Alex. There's a lot of questions coming from the audience, and I'll kind of group them together. But a lot about any plans for Cloud RAN, and if so, what's your view on the front haul technology, to be CPRI-based, wireless, etc.?
Yes. Well, according to our experience, but also what we hear on international conferences, both small cell backhaul and Cloud RAN front haul are promising future technologies to fulfill rising bandwidth demands. For Cloud RAN, you need a front haul based on fiber, because the bandwidth must be very high to guarantee a low latency, and this can be fulfilled only with fiber. So as we were talking about fiber connectivity before, this is a very realistic and interesting option for operators that do own a large fiber network, whereas operators that are relying mostly on microwave, I think it will be difficult for them to realize to fulfill these front haul requirements for Cloud RAN, and maybe those OpCos who rely mainly on microwave backhaul will more develop their backhaul networks and introduce small cells on hotspots where they need to improve their capacity.
Yes, that's interesting. Another one on wireline backhaul. You indicated in your slides only about 1% relying on copper. But one of our audience asked whether you see a chance for VDSL2 with embedded synchronization as a future option.
I'd like to avoid misunderstanding. This 1% copper is only related to mobile broadband backhaul. Of course, A1 in Austria has a very large copper network, and we rely heavily on copper for fixed access for our fixed customers in combination with fiber to the curb, fiber to the street. Here we use to a very large extent copper networks with VDSL 2+ and using also vectoring in the future, and later also GFast, in order to make a good offer to our fixed customers. However, when it comes to mobile backhauling, to backhaul radio sites, we do not rely on copper, not at all.
That's great. Sadly, I see that we have come to the 1 hour, and aware of everyone's time. I think we have to finish the Q&A there. I apologise to anyone whose question wasn't answered, but I hope we got to quite a few of them, or that we can follow up with you offline afterwards. So I'd just like to say thank you so much, Alex, for your presentation and your really interesting answers in the Q&A, and I'll just hand back to Adeline to wrap up.
Well, thank you, Alex. Thank you, Caroline. Thanks for the audience for participating. As a reminder, the webinar has been recorded and the slide deck will be available in the next 2 business days. We'll send you an email, and we thank you again. We'll see you at the next webinar. Have a great day.
Thank you.